He didn't know at first. He questioned the intensity. He called it too much or just a phase. But something in him never really let go. Because when it's her, truly her, he can feel it, even when he tries to forget. She appears in his dreams, in songs, in moments of stillness he can't explain. And one day, it clicks, not in his mind, but in his spirit. She wasn't just someone, she was the mirror, the spark, the reason nothing else ever felt enough. And suddenly, her voice is louder in silence than anyone else's presence. Her memory doesn't fade, it echoes. Her absence doesn't create distance, it creates longing. This is how he knows, not because she waited, not because she chased, but because she became the version of herself that needed no convincing. And that's what pulled his soul in. Have you felt this shift? Have you noticed his energy returning, even when his words haven't? Then pay attention, because there are signs that the masculine is finally awakening, and the feminine he once ran from is now the one he can't forget. Stay with us. These are the 6 soul-level realizations that change everything. And if he's feeling it, it's already begun. There is a moment in every divine masculine's journey that doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't come with a text, or a call, or a grand gesture. It comes in silence. It comes in the stillness between distractions, in the space where the world stops being loud enough to drown out the truth. And in that moment, his soul starts to remember her, not as an idea, not as a fantasy, but as something ancient, something that once shaped the architecture of his being. At first, he doesn't understand it. There's no logical reason for her name to return, no explanation for why her energy wraps around his breath, or why her memory comes flooding back without warning. But it does, because the soul doesn't follow logic. It follows resonance. And when her frequency rises, when she releases, when she evolves, when she lets go of waiting and becomes her own light, he feels it. Not as pressure, but as permission to remember what he ran from. Because the truth is, he never forgot her. He just buried the memory beneath survival. He tried to replace it, tried to avoid it, tried to numb it. But you cannot unknow a soul that once saw you naked, not just in body, but in essence. And when the masculine begins to awaken, it's not because he reads a message from her, but because something stirs within him. A trigger, a dream, a song he can't explain, a silence that suddenly feels unbearable. He remembers how her presence made him feel seen, terrifyingly seen. He remembers the ache in her eyes, the softness of her voice, the way she held space for his chaos without needing to fix him. He remembers the light in her that made him feel like he didn't have to perform, that he was already enough. And that terrified him, because at the time, he didn't feel ready to be loved that way, to be held that deeply, to be mirrored that clearly. So he ran, to noise, to distraction, to other connections that didn't ask him to look inward. But now, the distractions don't satisfy. The noise no longer protects. The other connections feel empty. And in the quiet, his soul whispers her name, not out loud, but in longing, in tension, in the hollow feeling that no longer feels like freedom, but loss. And here's what you must understand. This isn't the moment he reaches out. It's the moment he wakes up. It's internal, it's subtle, but it's irreversible because once the soul starts to remember, it begins to seek, not from ego, but from ache. That's why he suddenly feels her in places where she isn't. Why her energy shows up in his chest like a burn, or in his sleep like a visitation. It's not obsession, it's not madness. It's the remembering. It's the soul returning to what once brought it home. And the feminine, if she's attuned, feels it too. A sudden heart flutter, a sense of presence when she's alone. Dreams of him looking, searching, standing still, as if waiting for something he doesn't understand. Have you felt it? That strange moment when he crosses your mind, not because you're missing him, but because he's missing you? That's the tether activating. That's the energetic signal shifting, because the masculine doesn't chase with his feet first, he chases with his spirit. And when his soul starts to remember, his field begins to reach for you, even if his mouth still says nothing. So don't be fooled by silence. Watch for the signs. The sudden surge in your heart when you feel him thinking of you. The tears that rise without reason. The warm current that flows through your spine at night. That's not just your imagination. That's him awakening in the field. And while he may not yet have the words, while he may still resist or hesitate, you can trust what your body knows. Because the body of the feminine always receives the signal first. Your womb feels it. Your chest tightens around it. Your eyes grow softer, even when you try to be strong. Not because you're regressing, but because you're being remembered. And being remembered by the masculine, in truth, means being felt as irreplaceable. Not because of what you did, but because of who you are. And now, as his soul rises from sleep, he begins to see it too. You are not just someone from his past. You are the blueprint of his becoming. The key to his sacred collapse. The mirror that reflects both his fear and his freedom. And once his soul sees it, once it truly remembers, he cannot go back to sleep. He may delay, he may distract, but the longing will grow louder than the noise. And eventually, his soul will begin to move toward the source of that remembrance, toward you. Not to possess, not to fix, but to meet. Because now, he knows. You weren't a mistake. You were a prophecy. And the moment he begins to remember is the moment his journey back truly begins. He won't say it out loud, not yet, because the words haven't caught up with the feeling. But that doesn't mean he doesn't feel it. The divine masculine feels the presence of the feminine long before he admits it, even to himself. It begins quietly. In the middle of an ordinary day, in the breath he didn't know he was holding, in the silence between one distraction and the next, something stirs in him, and it's not memory, it's presence. She's there, not in form, but in energy. And it catches him off guard. He might brush it off. He might tighten his jaw and get back to work. He might tell himself he's just tired, nostalgic, overwhelmed. But her frequency is undeniable because she doesn't just live in the past. She lives in the field, and the field doesn't lie. When the feminine rises, when she returns to herself, when she chooses her own wholeness over waiting, her presence multiplies. It stops being needy. It becomes magnetic. And that's when he begins to feel her. In the still moments, in the ache he can't explain, in the warmth that enters the room when he's alone and shouldn't feel anything at all. This is the moment that makes him pause. He remembers her laugh, not as sound but as vibration. He recalls her gaze, not through images, but through sensations. He hears her name in the quiet, not with his ears, but through the echo that lives inside his ribs. He won't admit it. Not to others, not even fully to himself. Because to admit he feels her, still, is to admit that he never truly let go. And he's not sure he's ready to face that, but his body already has. That's why his chest tightens when she crosses his mind, why his hands feel restless in moments of peace, why the usual things that numbed him stop working. Because her energy doesn't fade with time. It amplifies through alignment. And now, she's aligned. Not with him, but with her own divine frequency. And he feels it like a pull, like a pressure, like a heartbeat that suddenly isn't his alone. And still, he stays silent. But don't confuse silence with indifference. He may appear calm, detached, unbothered, but inside, he's trembling. Because she's not just a woman he once loved. She's the part of him he's still learning to accept. And her return, not physically, but energetically, forces him to meet the version of himself he's avoided. He doesn't know how to process that, so he stays quiet. He watches her from afar. He resists the urge to reach out, not because he doesn't feel her, but because he does, deeply. He feels her when he's in a crowd and suddenly feels alone, when a lyric hits too hard, when the night stretches too long, when the dreams get vivid, and she's always there, not chasing him, not waiting, just glowing. He feels her in the absence, and it's that absence that teaches him presence. Because the feminine, when she stops chasing, becomes everywhere. She becomes the wind that won't stop brushing his neck, the silence that echoes louder than his thoughts, the mirror that follows him even with his eyes closed. And one day, he'll admit it, he'll speak it, write it, cry it out. But for now, he's listening to the weight of her memory, to the truth of her essence, to the invisible thread that tugs at him when he thinks no one notices. And here's the thing the feminine must know. You don't have to do anything for him to feel you. You don't have to reach out. You don't have to remind him. You don't have to wait, because he feels you, always has, and now more than ever. He feels your release. He feels your transformation. He feels the softness you kept only for yourself. And that's what breaks him open. Not the pain, not the longing, but the purity of your becoming. That's what shows him. She didn't just love me. She healed without me. She loved herself into the woman I never had the courage to hold. And that's the version he feels most. The you that glows in peace. That no longer needs him to complete the story. The you that becomes the light he once feared and now needs. So, if you've been wondering, if you've been questioning, if you've felt him but heard nothing, trust the silence. Because the silence is where the remembering begins. And though his mouth hasn't spoken, his field already has. He's reaching, he's aching, he's waking. And when the time comes, he won't just feel you. He'll come to meet the version of himself who can finally hold what he never could before. And in that moment, he'll speak. But for now, the silence is saying everything. He tries to move forward. He tells himself he's over it, that it was intense, yes, but temporary. that she was a phase, a lesson, something beautiful, but not meant to stay. And yet, the signs don't let him go. No matter how much time has passed, no matter how much noise he puts around his heart, there are moments that pierce through everything, moments that return. Like whispers from the universe, they come in patterns, in numbers, in songs he wasn't supposed to hear, in names that echo through the mouths of strangers, in dreams that won't fade, no matter how much distance he creates. At first, he calls them coincidence, random, meaningless, but they persist. He keeps seeing her birthday on clocks, her favorite song playing in random places, a phrase she once said, showing up in a book, in a billboard, in a conversation he wasn't even trying to hear. And the more he ignores it, the louder it becomes. Because it's not her chasing him, it's the field, it's the memory of her soul etched into the fabric of his becoming. She is part of his path, not by choice, but by design. And the signs are the map back to what he tried to forget. Have you ever wondered if he notices? He does. Even if he never tells you. Even if he stays silent, still pretending nothing ever touched him. Because the masculine often realizes the truth, not through logic, but through repetition. And repetition is the divine's way of piercing through denial. These signs, they're not gentle anymore. They show up when he's with someone else, when he's trying to be normal, when he thinks he's found peace, and then a dream of her, a flash of her smile, a memory that tastes too real, too alive. And suddenly, nothing feels safe, because her essence is still alive in his body. And the more he tries to forget, the more the universe reminds him. She's not a story he can close. She's the chapter that rewrites the book. And the signs keep bringing him back to that truth. At first, it drives him mad, because he's not ready to admit he missed it, missed her. He's not ready to admit that he lost more than a woman. He lost the mirror of his own soul, so he pushes it away, distracts himself, lies to himself. But the signs, they're relentless, because they're not just reminders of her, they're reminders of who he was in her presence. The softness she brought out in him, the dreams he dared to speak when she was near, the sense of purpose he felt, even when nothing made sense. These signs don't just point to her, they point to the version of him he can't unsee. And that's what scares him most, not her power, but what he became in the light of her presence. So he sits with it, alone, one sign after another, repeating numbers, visions, premonitions, odd synchronicities. And deep inside, his soul begins to whisper, "It wasn't over, you just weren't ready." And now, the signs are calling him back to readiness, to remembrance, to the portal he once avoided, and now cannot escape. Because the divine doesn't stop knocking. And the signs are not cruel. They're invitations, soft echoes that say, go back, not to her, but to who you were becoming when you loved her right. He feels it in his bones now, the shift, the ache, the knowing. It doesn't matter how far he runs. Her presence follows him in patterns, not because she's watching, but because she let go. And when the feminine truly releases, the universe starts delivering her light in all the places the masculine thought he had buried it. So, divine feminine, if you've felt the silence, if you've wondered if he remembers, If you've questioned whether he sees the signs, trust this, he sees them. He just doesn't know how to interpret them yet. But the longer they return, the more undeniable they become. And one day, when the signs get louder than his pride, louder than his fear, louder than the stories he told himself to survive the loss, he will respond, not to the signs, but to the voice inside him that finally says, "She was never a phase, she was the beginning." And that's the moment the masculine begins to return, not in words, but in soul, because the signs never left, and neither did she. There's a moment no one else sees, a moment in the middle of the night, when everything is quiet, when the world is asleep, and he can't hide from himself anymore. That's when it happens, when the dreams begin. They don't feel like normal dreams. They're not random, not chaotic. They feel real, sometimes more real than the waking world. He sees her, sometimes clearly, sometimes just her presence, a sensation, a light, a voice that echoes in a place beyond logic. And in that space, he doesn't pretend, he doesn't run, he remembers. He remembers the feeling of her love before the pain, the safety in her gaze before the silence, the vibration of her voice calling him deeper into himself. It doesn't happen once. It keeps coming, night after night in cycles, especially when he thinks he's moved on, especially when he's with someone else, especially when he tries to convince himself she was just a dream, because the soul never forgets. And in sleep, the soul speaks louder than the mind. Have you ever wondered what his silence hides? It hides visions he can't explain, moments that replay while he sleeps, conversations that never happened, but feel like they should have. Touch that lingers in his memory, even though it's been years since he felt her skin. In his dreams, he holds her. He apologizes. He admits things he never could say out loud, and sometimes he wakes up crying. Not from sadness, but from the unbearable beauty of what he lost and what he still feels. Because the truth is, the dreams are not fantasies. They are memories from a soul level. They are his higher self trying to break through the resistance, trying to remind him that the connection was real, is real, will always be real, no matter how deeply he tries to bury it. And these dreams aren't always gentle. Sometimes they show him what could have been, what he walked away from, what he wasn't ready to carry, and he wakes up with a weight in his chest, a longing in his bones, a question he can't shake. Why does it still feel like she's mine? Because in the dream space, she never left. Because in the realm of soul, there's no such thing as separation. And that's the truth he starts to face. At first, he doubts it, brushes it off as nostalgia, as guilt, as his subconscious playing tricks. But then the patterns begin. He dreams of her when he's about to make a decision. He hears her name when he's walking into the wrong path. He feels her hand in his when he's close to collapse. And suddenly, he's no longer confused. He's haunted, not by her, but by the love he didn't know how to hold. Because what she gave him was never ordinary, and his soul knows it. Every time he dreams, it's like a message. She's still part of you. She still is the mirror. And even when he resists it, even when he distracts himself, the dreams find him. Because love like this leaves echoes in the deepest layers of a man's being. It doesn't die. it waits. And the more he dreams, the more he starts to question what's real and what's denial. He may not tell anyone. He may not even admit it to himself. But inside, a door opens, a soft surrender, a crack in the armor. Because the divine doesn't force realization, it gently reminds. And there is no reminder more powerful than the dreams that make him feel her again. Not her body, not her voice, her essence. And once he feels that, there's no going back. So, Divine Feminine, if you've felt his energy returning in the middle of the night, if you've woken up from dreams of him with your heart wide open, if you've felt a strange peace like his soul was near, trust it. You were there. He saw you. And somewhere inside him, he remembered. He may not speak yet. He may not even know what it means. But the dreams are leading him home, and one day, he will stop running from the truth they showed him, because dreams are where the soul rehearses what the heart will one day say out loud. There's a strange moment in the Divine Masculine's journey when the truth begins to rise. But it doesn't come as logic. It doesn't come with explanations or timelines. It doesn't even make sense to his conscious mind. It just is. He knows. But he doesn't know why he knows. He can't point to a text, or a moment, or a reason. He just feels it. A pull in his gut, a sensation in his chest, a soft ache in the background of his day. And it all leads back to her, not to the version of her he once knew, but to something deeper, the essence, the frequency, the soul that feels more like home than any person ever did. He tries to shake it off. He thinks, it's been too long, or it couldn't have been that real. But no matter how many times he tries to logic it away, something inside refuses to go silent. She keeps showing up. In music, in symbols, in feelings that have no name. And it's not obsession, it's recognition. Because the truth is, he recognized her before he understood her, before he understood himself. And now, as the noise of the world starts to fade, as the false connections fall away, as the distractions lose their flavor, the knowing becomes louder. He doesn't need proof. He doesn't need permission. Because the soul doesn't ask, it remembers. But still, the mind wrestles with it. Why her? Why now? Why does she feel closer in silence than anyone who speaks to him every day? Why does the thought of her bring both peace and pain? Why does he feel her, even when he hasn't seen her in what feels like lifetimes? He can't answer it, but he knows. And that knowing is the beginning of everything. Because before the masculine can return in form, he must first admit what his energy already accepted. That it was always her, even when he ran, even when he doubted, even when he tried to replace what he couldn't explain. She stayed, not physically, but vibrationally. And now her absence is louder than anyone else's presence. Her silence teaches more than any words he hears. Her memory isn't fading, it's crystallizing. And this confuses him. Because how can he feel so certain and yet so unsure? How can something make so much sense in his body, but so little sense in his mind? It's because the soul speaks in codes, and those codes are not meant to be analyzed. They're meant to be followed. When the masculine feels this knowing, he doesn't have the map yet, but he feels the direction. He feels the path open within how he thinks of her. He feels peace when he imagines being honest with her. He feels alignment when he drops the story and lets the feelings speak. This is the divine timeline at work, the inner GPS waking up, the truth moving in before the reasons arrive. Have you felt him lately? Felt his pull? Felt the soft return of his energy? Unsure, but sincere? That's him, knowing and not knowing why, but still feeling it fully. You are the one who activated this. Not by trying, not by forcing, but by becoming. By embodying your truth so fully, so gently, so fiercely, that it echoed across the connection and stirred something dormant in him. This is the stage where his ego can't lead. Only his essence can respond, and it will. Even if he doesn't have the words, the courage, or the understanding yet, his energy is shifting. Because knowing without knowing why is a sign of a low-level awakening. And that kind of knowing is irreversible. So when he closes his eyes and sees you, when he breathes deeply and you come to mind, when he hears a song and it cracks his heart open, don't mistake his silence for distance. It's recalibration. It's realization. It's the sacred confusion that precedes clarity. He knows. And soon he'll understand why. She came and left a sound behind. Not a noise, not a word, not a scream for attention, but a frequency, a subtle vibration that he didn't understand when he first felt it, but one that never truly disappeared. Because her presence was never about being loud, it was about being real, being true, being her. And in a world full of echoes and illusions, her frequency was the only thing that actually sounded like home. At first, he ignored it. He told himself it was just connection, just chemistry, just a phase. He tried to forget, to bury it, to replace it with voices that didn't shake his soul the way hers did. But something always felt off. Every new conversation, every new hand he held, every new room he entered, it all felt one frequency too low, one shade too dull, one moment too quiet, in the wrong kind of silence. Because the truth is, you can't unknow a soul. You can't unfelt an energy that entered through the spirit. You can't replace something that matched you. And she matched him. Not in the way he expected, not always soft, not always easy, but in the way that cracked him open, in the way that exposed his truth, in the way that reminded him what presence feels like. She didn't need to chase, she just needed to be. And that being stayed, even when she walked away, even when she chose herself, even when she stopped replying or explaining or waiting. Her frequency stayed. It lived in the pause between his thoughts. In the dreams that woke him at 2:22 a.m., in the memory of a voice that wasn't just sound but energy. He doesn't talk about it. Not because it's not real, but because it's too real. Too close to the part of him that still fears vulnerability. Too honest for a world that taught him to protect, to mask, to run. But even in silence, she remains. Like a scent he can't place but suddenly smells when something deep inside shifts. Like a melody that plays in the background of moments that matter. Like the first moment of peace after months of noise, and he doesn't know where it came from. That's her. That's the frequency. And no matter how many cycles pass, he won't forget it. Because she didn't enter his life with the goal of being remembered. She entered with the mission of awakening. She wasn't just a chapter. She was the key, the one who mirrored back his light and his shadows, The one who left not to punish him, but to protect what was sacred. The one who showed him that real love doesn't beg, perform, or convince. It just is. And when it is, it doesn't leave a void. It leaves a vibration, a signal he still feels when he slows down enough to hear. He doesn't know how to explain it, or why it still comes, or how, in the quietest of moments, she still feels louder than anyone else. But that's what truth does. It lingers not to haunt, but to guide, not to force, but to call. Because the feminine doesn't need to scream to be heard. Her frequency speaks for her, and once he's truly felt it, he'll never forget. Not in this life, not in the next, not even when she stops waiting. Because the truth isn't bound by time, and neither is she. She is the frequency that called him forward, and when he's ready, it will call him home.